Oh, hey! Let me blow your mind today. I'm going to turn over 30 quilting and sewing time suckers straight into time savers. I've saved the best for last. In no particular order, enough talking already, let's go. Ever wonder if you were using the right thread and the right needle for the job that you are about to do in your sewing room? Let me give you a guideline so that you don't suck your time away trying to figure out what goes with what. They couldn't have made it more complicated, friends, really. The larger the number of weight on a thread, it's finer, as opposed to a lower weight number, meaning it's a thicker thread. Very confusing. This is the Aurifil that probably a lot of you are used to. The orange color Aurifil is a cotton 50 weight. The gray one is 28 weight. 50 weight, 28 weight. Which one's thicker? The 28 weight gray is thicker than this orange one. What do you use this gray one for? Well, I use it for free motion quilting and piecing if I want to use all cotton thread in my quilting. The orange, I don't really use it because my machine doesn't like it. Now your machine may like it. If it works, keep it. I happen to have an Omni polyester thread in my sewing machine right now, and it is a 30 weight. When it comes down to thread on my sewing machine, I do prefer a polyester, but I have been experimenting with some cotton threads, and that's why I prefer the gray, because it's stronger when it comes to piecing and quilting my projects. Let's talk needles. Oh yeah. I'm gonna pop a picture here. This is for a guide only. I want you to try out this first, what the guide shows you, and then you can veer off from one number up or one number down. Now, the larger number on the needle, the fatter the needle is, and vice versa, I think. Yeah, so many numbers to keep track of. That's why I typically use one thread and one needle in my sewing machine most of the time. Always a top stitch needle, no matter what, is what I use in my sewing machine. A top stitch needle will work for almost everything. 80-12, the Aurifil that most people use. For my Omni and for my gray, which are both thicker than this thread right here, I use a 90-14. If you notice that your thread is being shredded down here by the needle or it's snapping off, that tells me that your thread is either too big for the hole to go through and it's too much friction, or the needle is just too small, so make adjustments. Figure it out, friends. You can do it. I get asked a ton about this time saver. It can truly be a time sucker, especially in quilting when you're at your sewing machine and you have a big ironing station over here and you just really need a nice little ironing pad right next to you. This is perfect, friends, and you can make this yourself. All it is particle board. That's it. Just cut into a round shape. So what I've done is made homemade elastic covers for this. You can see here, I've made a ton. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just keep piling them up over top of this board because it just gives it a little bit more cushion. Yeah, there's just batting and some of that Thinsulate stuff in here for ironing. That's it. And this is so portable and so easy to move all around. And you can totally take this to Quilt Retreat with you. I know I get excited about all of my time savers, but you know why? It's because they really do save me time. I wouldn't tell you if they didn't. This one, it's hard for me not to say that it's the holy grail of time saving because I really do believe that it is. When I got my hands on pre-wound bobbins, friends, I ain't even kidding you. It was over for me. I was never going to wind another bobbin. I sew so much, and I know a lot of you do too. And if I have to stop, wind my bobbins, I mean, it's gonna take me some time. I'm not really gonna say a whole lot about this. Yes, they do cost money. Time, money. Which would you rather have? And I'm gonna leave it at that. If you sew or quilt at all, you, my friend, need to know what the grain line is in fabric and why you need to know it and what does it mean. Having knowledge of the grain line is power when it comes to quilting and sewing. Here's just a normal fat quarter, right? Do you see the selvage edge right here? It's the part where the writing is. It's where they bind the fabric. There's another edge at the other end. That's where they connect the fabric to weave it together. Well, if you look up and down on the selvage area and pull, it has no give at all. Oh, it's tough. It's its strongest point right here. What would you use a grain line that goes right along the selvage area? What would you use in a project for that? Garment, a shirt, a skirt, you need to go with the grain line, because if you go in the opposite direction, it's going to give you a real wonky result, and you don't want that. When you do a tote bag that isn't quilted and has no interfacing or anything in it, if you fold this up and go like this, that's going to give you the strength now when you go to put something in your project. Having the wisdom of that, it's power, friends. You know, when we get those jelly roll strips, they usually come from selvage all the way to the other end of the selvage, right? This area right here, it's stretchy. Ooh, it's stretchy. You can feel it, right? Now, why would that help you out? Well, in quilting, that could help you out if you're going around rounded corners with your binding, or if you know that this is the area that's the stretchiest, you might go a little easier on the pressing part of it because it'll bow out. This right here, that's really stretchy from corner to corner. That is called the bias, and that's the most stretchiest part of a fabric. That's even more stretchier than this part right here. So we got no stretch, a little bit of stretch, a lot of stretch. So when you go to do your project, whether it be a quilt binding or a purse or a tote bag or whatever, a garment, think to yourself, which way should the grain line go for this? Typically, the pattern will have it in there. A lot of times in quilting, there's a lot of repetition, meaning you cut the same block over and over again. It might be a different print on fabric, but it's pretty much like a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch square. You need like 100 of them or something. What you need to start doing is stacking and whacking. It's so simple, friends. As long as you have a really sharp rotary blade and a good ruler, you can do this. Make sure that everything is nice and straight so that nothing bows, and just start stacking up your fabrics. I can get approximately 6 fabrics stacked on top of each other and then set my ruler down and slice out a strip, and then I can subcut those squares that I need. It literally will cut your time in half. This is a huge time saver for me. I keep this next to my sewing machine, and it has all the goods in it. Everything that I use probably every time I sit down to sew. It's on a little Lazy Susan, and it's got a small footprint, so it's not one of those really big Lazy Susans with the compartments. It's a small one. I got this in the makeup department at Walmart. I'll try and find one to link below that's similar. This keeps all of my stuff so nice and tidy because I am not a neat person when it comes to like my sewing room and having all my tools and everything out. So I keep my 7-inch and 5-inch, I think, scissors. These are my good cutters. And I do have a pair of snips in here, a couple tweezers. I definitely keep my, where is it? Oh yeah, I keep my oil next to my sewing machine because some machines need oiled and this is one of them. Some don't, but this one does. I have a couple packs of my top stitch needles here in a couple different sizes. I have multiple seam rippers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seam rippers because you know we're always seam ripping. And here are these little, they're foamy things where they catch all the lint inside by my bobbin area. I get these at Juki Junkies, and so you can pick those up there. And I have some stilettos in here to help guide the fabric in. I have these right here are I call them pokey tools because I don't know what else to call them. Like when you turn a project back to right side out after you've sewn it, you use this to kind of push the seam along so the seam gets pushed out so you can press it really nice. These are handy. I have my heat erasable pens, my pencils, a glue stick. I also have my pencil sharpener in here that catches the little shavings from this. I like to keep a pencil sharpener here because I am forever using my pencils for everything. And I like a nice sharp pencil, not a dull one. It would be a total time sucker if I had to go searching in drawers and bins for any one of these items. How many of you watching right now have literal thread balls living down in your sewing chair wheels? A lot of you have the same problem that I do. The threads get tangled up in the wheels and there's no way to get it out. At least you think there's no way to get it out. I've showed you all before how I cleaned my sewing wheels. I took some little scissors and had to sit down on the floor, snip at it and pull with tweezers and you know, all that. Well, that was really sucking my time, no doubt about it. Well, they filled up again, of course, because I have hardwood floors here and wheels, and I sew a ton in my sewing room. Now, when I went to clean them this next time, I thought, surely there has to be a more simple way to clean the threads out of our wheels. So, I got online and I did a little investigation. Did you know that the wheels will pop apart at where those discs are? They connect on to that little dowel, that metal dowel in the center. Well, I didn't know that you could pry them open. Here I was digging the threads out. Friends, that would take me most of the day to get those threads out. This is a huge time saver, friends. All you have to do is take 2 flathead screwdrivers, stick them in there, pry them apart like so, and the sides pop off. I had so much thread in my wheels. I mean, I had this done in lickety-split time. You're welcome. One of the time suckers that most don't know about, when you fold fabric in half and then try to slice it cleanly so that everything is even, did you know that when you fold it, that the fold has to be towards you, not away from you? I've seen some sewists and quilters fold their fabric and the selvages are near them. And then they line their ruler up and then they slice. You need to fold it in half. You know, if you want to save time anyways, you fold it in half with the fold towards you, and then you line up your ruler and make sure that that fold is straight on one of the lines of your ruler, and then you slice. That will save you time, friends. What I won't do for you, friends, to get the shot, right? Did you know that sitting and sewing not only suck your time, but it can also make you gain some weight? You can burn 37 calories in an hour while standing and sewing. Not only will you burn all those calories, but when you stand and sew, I mean, I don't do it all the time, but when you do, just know that you're being way more efficient. And if you do the trifecta, like the sewing machine here, the ironing board here, your design wall here, you can do your thing, and do your thing, and you're literally moving as you're doing that. And you're doing your foot pedal and all that. So yeah, it totally makes sense. This is for all my hand sewists out there. Have you ever jumped in the car? You're not the one driving, of course. You're the passenger in this scenario. And you're going to be in the car for a good minute. Like, oh, I don't want to be on my phone. And I like talking to the person who's driving or someone that's in the car, but I wish I had my hand sewing with me to help keep me busy, and I can save some time later and get some hand sewing done. I do that a lot, friends. As you know, I've been working on my slow sew here on my channel, the bricks, the brick wall, or whatever you want to call it. It's just a bunch of rectangles. A lot of times I will jump in the car and I'll have my little board with me and I'll have my needles and the things that I need, because it's, you know, just like a quilt as you go slow sew. It's really a lot of fun. I'll put the playlist below if anyone's interested. We're still not done with that sew along. So yeah, it's taken me quite a long time. But I still grab it and go and sew on the go. That's not only a time saver or a time get-aheader, it's really a lot of fun. Here's a classic time sucker for you. Ever go into your sewing room, start a project, and then you go to press something and realize, hey, I never turned on my iron. Oh my word. Now you gotta wait, like it seems like hours, right, for it to heat up. Save yourself some time. The minute you walk in your sewing room and say, "Good morning, sewing room," turn that iron on, and I guarantee you that iron will be hot and ready for you when you're ready. Using a larger rotary blade and cutter can definitely save you a little bit of time. Whenever you have to cut a bunch of yardage in long strips or whatever, grab that 60mm rotary cutter and you'll get to the end faster. I didn't even realize this at the beginning. I always preferred a 60 over a 45, and maybe it was because it was getting the job done quicker and I didn't even realize it. Now, when I first started sewing years ago, I just went to like a Walmart or something like that and purchased some rulers, some quilting and some hemming rulers and just different rulers. Had I known it at the time, I would have never have purchased the yellow ruler. I cannot tell you how much time I wasted trying to look through the yellow lined rulers on where the edge of my fabric was, or the particular block that I needed to cut for quilting, or the straight line that I needed to cut on anything. I wear glasses, as you can see, so my eyes are probably not right out the gate good, right? Having those yellow rulers muddies the water, friends. It really does. Now here's the thing though, you don't know what you don't know. That's why I made this video. I decided that I was just going to try one of the more expensive rulers, the Creative Grid rulers, because they're mostly the clear rulers, right? When I tried the clear rulers, just the light bulb went off in my head and I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, side by side, I did a comparison and I did show it in another video. This, for me, was a game changer because all of a sudden, when I went to the clear ruler, I was able to see my line precisely right away. I didn't have to look and think and say, oh, is that there? And try to go this way and hold the ruler. And oh my word, it was eye-opening for me. Yellow ruler, time sucker. Clear ruler, time saver. Just saying. You take up some time during your sewing session looking for your pins. I got this cute little kitty cat that has a magnet here on the face of it, and then it has this suction cup right here on the back. All you do is stick it to a flat surface and, clean it with alcohol or something first so that it sticks really good. And then you can just take a few pins and place them here. And that way you always have a few pins close by. So simple, friends. That's a time saver. If you slice your fabric and the fabric does not slice in certain spots along the way, stop what you're doing, take out this rotary blade and put a fresh one in. If by chance you do cut yourself with your rotary cutter, your finger or something, you'll want it to be a sharp blade, not a dull one. Why is that a time sucker? Well, how many times have we cut the fabric and been like, okay, let's just go over it again and again and again, right? I've done it too. Oh, I can get a few more pennies out of that rotary cutter. No, don't do that, friends. Just get a new blade. It's what we do. It's what we use. It's the tools of the trade. And plus, not to mention, time sucker, you cut yourself and end up in the ER. Oh yeah, at least if you have a brand new blade in there, it'll slice cleanly. Sometimes just knowing the why on why you should do something explains it all. Have you ever been sewing like something that needs to be stuffed, or something where you've sewn right sides together and then the project needs to be turned right side out? Or even when you're making like a big quilt that has 2 layers and you do the birthing method, right? You've sewn your seam all the way around only to turn it right side out, and you're trying to push the seams out and you see holes where your seams look like they're coming apart, but they may not be at that moment, but eventually they will. It's like there's spacing in between them. Friends, let me tell you something you might not know. Whenever you're doing a project, like say my fabric stuffed Christmas trees, you're making them and you're sewing all along the sides of the curves of the tree. You need to be using a very small stitch length, a 1.5 to 2 millimeter stitch length. You know why? Because it tightens it up so that when you turn it right side out, your stuffing isn't going to be poking out, and it makes it nice and tight, and you're not going to see any raw edge seams or anything crazy like that. For a long time, I never did that. I always thought, oh, I knew what I was doing and I could just use like a 3-inch stitch length or something like that. I didn't even think about it really. Well, that's wrong, so that's why I'm here to tell you. Use a smaller stitch length, and even like on tote bags or something that needs to be turned right side out, make sure that you use a 1.5 to 2. Now when it comes to piecing for quilts and such, the quilt blocks that you're running through your sewing machine, you want a 2 to 2.5 millimeter stitch length, because that as well needs to be nice and tight. Now, why do these stitch lengths go so high, like 3 and 4 millimeters? That is for top stitching. That is more of a decorative stitch length. So say you've just made a pretty quilted wallet. You turned it right side out, and it has the seam where it's all sewn up. Well, in order to tack that down nicely, if you used a smaller stitch length, it would look too muddy in there and too close together. But if you use a nice 3 to 4 millimeter stitch length, it's going to give you that nice finished professional look. This is one of my favorite little secrets behind my sewing station. This will keep all the cluttery threads off of your station, friends, or any little bits and bobs, or a needle that's been broken, or whatever. These little bags are the perfect size. They're self-adhesive. They just stick right on the side of anything. They're actually for cars, but I find that they work perfect in the sewing room. I mean, really, friends, no more looking around trying to figure out where you're gonna throw your piece of whatever. Like if your can's across the room, or you have limited space or whatever, this is absolutely perfect. And think about taking this to quilt retreats as well. I mean, how well does that work out? I mean, it's a win-win all the way around. I'm going to get questions on this one, and no, it does not hurt any surface that it sticks to. The surface on this little sticky is very light and it's very forgiving, and when it sticks, and when you take it off, it comes off. Are you ever at your sewing machine and you're like, oh yeah, I need to put my walking foot on, or oh yeah, it's time to free motion quilt, I need to change my foot, and you're like, oh, what in the world did I do with my screwdriver so that I can take this off? And then you spend like an hour searching your sewing room. Yeah, that was me a lot of times before I did this. I put this back immediately when I'm done with it, so that way I know where it is at all times. And this is how I keep track of it. This is a magnet, and it has a piece of Velcro on the back of it, and I just covered it with some fabric, and I think I hot glued it. It's been a while now since I did this. And I put some Velcro here and Velcro on my machine that had the sticky, and then I stick this to the side of my machine, and then I take my little key, I call it, which will take off my sewing foot, and I'm able to change my needle with it. And look at this. It sticks right to it. I never lose my key, friend. This next one, it's not new. We definitely know that we need to do this, and that's clean up our sewing space before we start the next project. For whatever reason, it's really hard for me to do that, but I do know that if everything is clean around me when I do start that project, I'm typically ready to go and I can think clearly. It's a total time sucker if you're sitting there and you're ready to do this great project, but you have to clean your room up first before you can do it. I never would have thought that a 1/4 inch could cause so much controversy in so many quilters' lives. For me, it doesn't matter if it's a scant 1/4 inch, a 1/4 inch, or a fat 1/4 inch, or a 1/2 inch. Use what you want. The key is to be consistent. Here's how to do that. No matter what seam allowance that you would like to use on your project, there are a couple ways that you can do this. They do sell magnetic seam guides. They magnetize right to your sewing machine. Some people are afraid of those. I'll give you an alternative here in a second. You take that magnetic seam guide and you magnetize it here where you would like it, and it's pretty strong. And you line it up however you would like. I like mine at a scant 1/4 inch. And then you just feed your fabric through like normal, but you're kind of pushing that fabric up against that seam guide, and that just helps you stay really straight. It works, friends. Now, if you're in the camp where you don't want to put anything magnetized on your sewing machine, I get it. Grab yourself a stack of Post-it notes, approximately a 1/4 inch thick in Post-it notes, and you can even slice them down to whatever size that you would like on your sewing machine. They come in all different sizes now, but you take that sticky part and you lay it down just like you saw in the magnetized one, where you would like it. And you do the same thing. You feed your fabric through and sew that 1/4 inch or whatever inch seam allowance you would like. And it just helps guide you. And friends, perfect every single time. No more going fat up top and skinny at the bottom of these seams and then having to unpick because it's all crazy. Yeah, it works. Next one, it's a huge time saver for my quilters out there who quilt their own quilts like I do. Have you ever been quilting your quilt after, you have the sandwich all together and you quilt your quilt, either free motion quilting or straight liner, however you do it, and you get all done and you're looking at it and you're like, wait a minute, something isn't right there. And here you have sewn the back of the backing backwards onto the side of your quilt. And you look at it and you're like, oh, great. Well, let me tell you, I've got a huge time saver for you so you don't have to unpick that. When you put your quilt sandwich together, the 3 layers, the quilt top, the batting, and the backing, when it comes to those side portions, curl from the back upward onto the top of the quilt top and either clip it or put some of those big safety pins in it. That way, when you go to free motion quilt or quilt some straight lines, that is visible at all times, and there's no way that it's going to flop back on you and go underneath and catch under your needle. This next one, most of us already know it. Here's a refresher, or if you don't know. Whenever you have multiple blocks that you need to sew, say in quilting, where you have to repeat that same block over and over again, say like sewing a 3.5 inch square to another 3.5 inch square, and you have to like do 100 sets of those, you would pile them up next to your sewing machine, lay them together, and just start feeding them through your sewing machine without breaking thread. And when you get done, there's a little space there in between, and I have a cutter right here on the side of my machine, or you can get one of those little cutters that sit on your table and you can just slice the threads over and over. It saves a ton of time in quilting. Are you ever at the sewing machine and you can't find these little babies right here, your curved snips? I have like 5 pairs of these, and do you think I could find one when I need it? Let me show you a couple ways that you can keep track of these little snips. First way you might not be thinking of, and when I first started sewing, I did this. I had a different pair of snips at the time, but I would put an elastic band around my neck, and then I would tie it to the handle of the little snips. And so every time I would go in the sewing room, I would just put it around my neck, and they were there, and I could just do my snipping. Now I move around too much, and I might poke myself because back then I wasn't standing and sewing. I wasn't like just doing all kinds of stuff in my sewing room, and I feel like I may have jabbed myself a couple times. So yeah, be careful with that one. The next best thing, if not better, is to put a damage-free hook on the side of your sewing machine, and then put a hook there and then put your little snips on it. So that way, every time that you're at the sewing machine and you got to do a little snippety snip, they're right there. I mean, it really is a no-brainer. And if you put them back every time that you take them off, they'll be there for you. Now, this time sucker might be why some of my quilting friends out there are coming up short when it comes to their quilting blocks. This is to prove to you all that pressing your fabric prior to cutting anything where it involves sewing or quilting is a must. I've taken 3 identically cut blocks, and I cut one that was a little bit bigger than the cut blocks. I first used dry heat on the one block, and then I used hot steam on the second block, and then on the third one I used some spray starch. After the spray starch, I then hit that block with some dry heat. Next, I did take the uncut block and I pressed it first, and then I went in and I cut it at the same square size that I did the first 3 blocks. After I cut the square that was identical with the other 3 blocks, I then pressed that again after I trimmed it to the size of the other blocks. And here's the results. The dry iron one, it was off. There was like a little less than 1/8 of an inch off on one of the sides. The hot steam block, it was definitely off, even a little bit more actually. There was like almost a whole 1/8 that it was off. The starched one, it was a little off and wonky, but I do think it's because I pressed it while the starch was too wet. But yeah, it was still off. Now the fabric that I pressed that was not cut yet, and then cut it to the block needed, and then I pressed it yet again, it was spot on. So friends, if you don't want to waste your time, make sure you pre-press all of your fabric really good and then go in for the cut. This time saver, it's so hard for me. I love my glass head pins, but when they get crooked, you have to throw them out. They are no longer useful. Do you know that I keep crooked pins and I'll pull one out and go to pin something and I'll be like, oh no, that's crooked, it's not gonna work. I just put it back in the pile and I'm sifting through trying to grab a straight one. Friends, don't waste your time. Just throw them out. Just throw them out. I know it's hard. It's hard for me. No worries though, because after you throw them out, you can open up a brand new pack. Marbled glass head pins. And you get 20 in here, and they are beautiful, I tell ya. They're heat resistant, so if you catch them with your iron, you're good to go. And they don't sell these in the store either, and I don't know why. I don't know why, because they really are pretty. They come with blue, yellow, aqua, and red, and they're in this nice little case right here that's kind of groovied up. I don't know how else to say that. Once you throw your pins in the garbage, make sure you do it on a date that you have a brand new pack to lay in here. Ooh, I love some new pins. Love me some new straight pins. Oh yeah. Oh my. And I'm putting them all in there too. And I'll probably end up ordering another pack of these and keeping them on hand. That way, when it's time to do this again, toss the old ones, I'll be ready. Tell me in the comments, do you have a favorite straight pin? And if you don't, it's okay. You can use mine as your favorite new straight pin. How many of you can relate with this time sucker? Have you ever thought to yourself, ooh, I'd like to make this one certain thing, and then you just go through all your fabric and you just start thinking, oh yeah, this might be how you make it, or maybe this is how you make it, and you just start messing around, and by the end of like hours in your sewing room, you've come to realize that you probably should have watched some type of tutorial on that. I've done it, friends, too, so yeah. So that's the time sucker part of it, the time saver. Think about what it is, the technique or the skill that you need to learn to do that project, and just simply search it out. Take this for example. I have a tutorial on inset circles. If you decided that you wanted to try putting circles into your quilt or your project or whatever, and you just tried doing it, you might fail and give up. Search it out, look up the tutorial, and see exactly what you need to do for that technique. Oh, friends, that will save you hours. How about making a simple Kleenex box? Have you ever wondered, how did they get that really perfect almond shape in the top? I have a tutorial on that too. Once you know how to do it, you can't unknow how to do it. It will save you hours of time. Trust me. Have you ever been trying to hand sew something, no matter how hard you try, you cannot get that thread to go in that needle? I mean, it takes a minute, right? There we go. Ooh, yeah, that took a minute. But then what happens when I'm doing my hand sewing and I accidentally, you know, lose it and it comes out, and then I got to do that all over again. That's a time sucker, friends. So let me share with you these right here. Now, you may have heard of these. These are self-threading needles. Friends, why aren't we using these like all the time? And if you look closely, and I don't know if you can tell, but in this pack, or I don't know if they're different brands or what, because I buy them every time I see them in the store. This one has a bigger eye, so to speak, than this one. So this one I would use for my threads to do my piecing, my hand piecing. And then the Pearl 8 cotton, I would use the larger eye right here. Because if you try to shove this thicker thread into this smaller eye, you know, it starts to shred the threads. So I would use the thicker with the bigger eye and then the thinner with that. So let me show you how this works. So I usually stick it into my board. I do have a tutorial for my hand sewing board. It's on my channel. I'll link it below. You simply just take it, hold it taut, and pop it on, and it's there already, friends. I mean, and you're good to go. It's that simple. To do the same thing, you're gonna set your needle there. I usually like roll it like that within my fingers to hold it taut, and then I just push down, and it's in there. And you are ready to go. And it does slide nicely back and forth, so there's no issues there. Friends, time saver. This is one of my absolute favorite time savers. If you're a new viewer to my channel, you definitely don't know about this one. I discovered fabric that you can put on boards for a design wall that will stick absolutely everything. Microfiber towels, and I have a full tutorial on my channel, so no worries there. I cannot tell you what a time saver this wall is. Before I used flannel, batting, so I would put my design out onto my design wall when it was flannel or the batting, and they would just fall off eventually, and I could barely get them to stick after a while. There is one thing that this design wall will not stick to. Can you guess it? It will not stick another microfiber towel. I was truly shocked to realize that, but hey, it is what it is. It sticks everything else, friends. I will never give up my microfiber design wall, ever. After many years of working with fabric, quilting, projects, you name it, I've done it. I believe there's only one way to store fabric where it makes sense. Now, the time sucker is that you have fabric all over the place. You have design bundles that go together in one spot and they're all together and so on and so forth. You know what I mean, hopefully. Once I started storing my fabrics by color, it was a game changer. Up in my closet over here, I'll show you that first, I have some yardage. And that yardage is all set by color. All the oranges, all the pinks, all the blues, you get it. And whenever I need any yardage of any kind, by yardage, I mean anything probably half a yard and up. So there are some smaller pieces up with the yardage. And I have my fat quarters, and these are all of my fat quarter bins that I have sorted by color. Friends, I cannot tell you how much easier it is to look for fabric when I need it. When I used to store my fabric before, it was just like, you know, whatever, wherever. It didn't matter if the greens were with the blues or the reds, it didn't matter. And I was so confused. I was like, oh, wait, I forgot I had that, you know? I'll link these bins below. They are awesome. They just fit fat quarters perfectly. And I have a ton of them, so it works. These are all of my green fabrics here, and I try to keep, you know, one bin per color. This bin is a double bin, and it has my blues in it because I have so many blues, right? It's just the way it is. And then here, I don't have as many yellow and purples, so I put those together. And these are all fat quarter size for the most part. There might be hit or miss here and there, some little bit more than fat quarters or a little less. It just all depends. They're not always kept real neat. You can see this. I threw some back in here. Even if it's not that neat within here, I still know that that color exists in that slot. Some of you might know already, but I do have a scrap wall of fame over here in this corner, and I'll pop a picture here. This has all of the little scraps in it. Now, some are little, some are bigger than little, but all are pretty much under a fat quarter size within those baskets. And that helps me because I can just pop those bags off the wall when I'm working on a project, and I can just work through them and just shove the fabric back in there when I'm done. And if I'm working on a project here and I see, oh, I got this little tiny blue piece, I know automatically that it goes there. Organizing your fabrics by color and size, it's going to save you a ton of time. Have you ever wanted to put beautiful scallops on the sides of your quilt? Or maybe you're making a darling table runner for the holidays and a scallop would just be oh so pretty. How about you're making a garment, a skirt or a top, and you want just the right amount of scallops evenly placed. Up until the moment that I designed the color-coded scallop extenders, there was nothing on the market to give you an even number of scallops all the way around without pulling your hair out, doing some math, and getting some special ruler, and then having to get paper anyways to trace it all out on. Oh, friends, that's all the time sucker. The time saver is my color-coded scallop extender. I designed the color-coded scallop extenders for the visual quilter. Because I'm a visual quilter, there was no way that I could use the rulers that were out there in the market today. I had to come up with something because I wanted to put scallops on my quilt and I didn't want to do math. You print out what you need from the PDF download. There's full instructions in there on how to use it. You get 3 sizes: the mini, the regular, and the large. Say you're making a quilt, you just put it around the perimeter of your quilt, you interlock them together, and then you just simply open it up to the same color on every single template. And you'll have 4 corners and all the templates in between, and you just open them up to the color needed, trace it, and then trim it all off. It's that simple, friends. The results, stunning. I can't even believe it myself. Oh yeah, you know, all that. Friends, that one has been a journey of mine for a while now. Well, ooh, it's stretchy. Or, oh, hey. Have you ever gotten something? I have a tutorial on inset circles, and take this for example. I have a tutorial on inset circles and tote bag or something that needs to be turned right side out after you've sewn wrong. They couldn't have made it more complicated, friends, really. Usually the weight means smaller. The weight on the thread is the smaller the number, the thicker the thread. So the smaller the number, no. So see, I'm already confused. There's a lot of experimenting on your, no. It's difficult. I will never give up my I will never give up my I will never give up. What the heck is this called? I will never give up my friends. What are you still doing here? Go down in that information box, look at all those links. Look at your screen right now, pick something that YouTube wants you to watch, and get going. Until next time on the Sewing Channel, take care.